Alright guys, so our next Sydney website section to create is Do You Want To, with these two button options that should take us to different parts of the site. So to get these set up, let's head back to Elementor. And while we're here, I'm just going to put a little more padding around what else we provide, because I noticed that the Sydney demo has a little bit more of that. Okay, so in advance, we're going to go with padding top of 60 and padding bottom of 60 or 72. And as you can tell, I'm pretty much eyeballing in most cases. But having a good eyeball, now that's a skill. So the next section, like we said, is Do You Want To? This is a perfect example for our intersection because we can clearly see there's two columns. Each one has a slightly different overlay color and then some text and a button inside them. So even if it looks complicated, really shouldn't be. Except for that red line underneath the headings. That's complicated. So let's go back to our Elementor editor. Let's go to the elements by clicking on the 9 boxes and drag in an intersection to the dotted area. Very cool. Now in each column on the left and right, we just need a bit of text with the text editor. So one text editor on the left, elements, one text editor on the right, back to elements, and then we need a button on the left, and of course a button on the right. Alright, nailed it. Then lastly, we just need a heading up top. So elements and heading up top. Alright, and now let's start designing. So the heading will say, Do you want to ... It'll be centered. And we already know this section's going to need some padding to push the content inwards. So let's click on the section settings, advanced, unlink the padding, and on the top, let's give it somewhere around 40. Very cool. And the bottom also could be 40. Okay, nailed it. Now we're going to change up the text. So the first paragraph is going to say, take some time and meet our employees, ? And the second section is not going to say that. I'm not sure why Sydney repeated that twice. Let's edit that second column there, Sydney. So we're going to make our second column say, get social with us, ? Alright, it's really easy to center that text if you use the center button, but even better is if you go to style and just click center there, because otherwise you're going to create some unnecessary HTML around the text. Next, let's work on our buttons. Let's center the click here button, and let's also center the other click here button. So what we want is for the buttons to be this Sydney orange-red color, and we want the background to be transparent when we're not hovering on the button, but to come into color when we are hovering on the button. It's a little bit complicated to set this up, but nothing's too tough for us. So first off, let's make sure we have that button color. We can click on one of our icons, get the style from it, and just grab that primary color. Now let's go to the button and let's make some edits. So click on style for your button. We're going to make the text color equal to that Sydney orange red. And we're also going to make the border color that color. So down in border type, choose border solid. Give the border a width of, let's say, 2 pixels and a color of that Sydney red. Alright, now it's going to be time to make that background color transparent. So hit background color and drag the right slider all the way down to nothing. And the background goes away. Alright, so now we want the button background color to come in when we hover on it. So let's go to the hover settings. Now let's go from the normal tab to the hover tab. And we're going to make sure the background color is actually that orange red when you hover on it. Cool. But the color, like the text color, has to be white. So choose text color. Make sure you get rid of that button color. It wants to stay there sometimes. Get out of there. So choose text color of white. Alright, and it looks like we've achieved our effect. Awesome. I can't quite tell if there's like a black line around the border too, or if it's just that blue line that's making it look darker. I think our button is perfect though. Okay, so let's just change up the button text by clicking content, and we're gonna say, instead of click here, meet the team. And then, so we don't have to do that work twice, we are gonna right click on the pencil icon and duplicate the button. And then we're just going to click on the pencil and hold and drag it to the right. Nailed it. And then just delete the other gray button. Nailed it. And we'll change that second button text to Find us on social media. Awesome. Okay, so this section is going to make a lot more sense in terms of the backgrounds and the overlays if we actually have a background on the section. Why don't we update our progress so far? And then we're going to click on section settings and style and give ourselves a background image. To create a background image, just click on the classic button and you'll get the color option and more importantly the image option. So click on image, and now we do need another image as a background, so let's try going over to the demo. So earlier we learned how to get the exact image that Sydney has as one of its backgrounds, but that can get a little bit hectic, so why don't we just go to Pixabay and look up a common background like workspace. Beautiful. Now with relative ease we can choose one of these cool backgrounds like this one with the business page open. Free download it, download, and we're just going to call this one Sydney Workspace BG for background and save it. So now we'll go back to Elementor and we can just upload that file, select the file from our computer, we can just double click it, and then lastly insert that media. And by doing that we have a really cool background. The background's a little bit too lit up for us though, so why don't we put a background overlay on it. You can click background overlay, then click classic and make it a color. And all you really need to do is just drag and make it gray or more gray or less gray or whatever you want to do. Okay, so that looks about as dark as we can make our background. What I want to do now is just make sure that the colors are red where they need to be and that we have our overlay set up. So what we can do is go to the individual columns and click edit and then go to style and we can give those their own background color. So let's click background type within this column, color, and let's add some darkness to it. Alright, so maybe we'll go with like more of a black, but then we can also make the overlay a little bit more revealing. Okay, cool. Once you get the right RGB color, you can just copy it as such and come back to the second column and see that I'm clicking on this little book-like black icon right here. It's kind of hard to see, but that will get you to the column settings. Style, background type classic, color, and we're going to paste in that same RGBA color. Okay, so the only few things left are to make these columns spread out. We can do that by giving them some margin on the left and right. So let's click on the column on the left, advanced, margin. All right, so margin is going to be unlinked. And then on the right, we're going to want something that will separate it from the column on the left. So it looks like 20 is about right, you know, maybe a little bit less, maybe like 16. And then we can go to the other column on the right, click the column settings again, this tiny little black icon, advanced, unlink the margin, and now I want column margin on the left. Boom, perfect. We also need to increase the space beneath the button so there's a little more gray beneath it. So we're going to go to the first column and click on padding, unlink it, and then we're going to click on bottom padding and make it something like 16. We got to do the same thing then for the column on the right, column settings, unlink the padding, bottom padding of 16. All right, and it's coming together. And while we're at it, I'm going to add some padding on the top as well so that the text that we can barely see has some more gray space above it. And same thing in the column on the left. Okay, now let's make that text a lighter color. Let's click on the text heading, click on text color, and we're going to need to go with a much lighter gray. That looks reasonable. All right, let's copy this hex. And before we leave here, let's make that a bold gray. So let's go to typography and make this weight of a default bold. And we can even bring the font size up a tad bit more just so it's a little more clear. Nailed it. Nailed it. Nailed it. Next, just right click on the pencil and duplicate that text, and we're gonna drag it into the right hand column so we don't have to make those changes again. And delete that other heading. Beautiful. Just change up the text in the right hand column. This section is so close to being done now, we just need to make our header that Sydney orange red. So let's click on the button, style, we can get that red color from the button itself, copy it, come back to the heading, click style, text color. Whew, this is exhausting, but we are forging ahead. Nailed it. And now last but not least, we have to make this section go the full width so that it actually looks reasonable. Let's click edit section, layout, stretch section. Perfect. And we have basically recreated the Sydney Do You Want To section, except for it's a little bit darker here, so it's a little more clear. Maybe we could make our background overlay on the section settings, style, background overlay, a little bit darker, even though our color is like fully black. If we make that hashtag 0 all the way across, that will be 6 zeros and it will be totally dark. We can make our columns a little bit darker too. Let's click on the column settings, style. All right, so color, we're gonna make that background just a little bit darker. Why don't we just make that background type hashtag 000 and then drag on the right to generate some opacity. All right, and then we can copy that RGBA, copy, column settings, style, background color, delete the current RGBA and paste in the new one, and update. Great job.